What up, guys? Welcome to the podcast. Today, we're going to have a buddy of mine, Mark Vives, on the podcast. He is the head coach at New Breed Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in north of Chicago. I think he said it was in Niles.
Niles, yeah.
I've known that guy for some years. I didn't really know him all that well until about, I think it was we would always see each other because you just see him, and like he's a pretty fiery competitor. When he goes to compete, he'll be like screaming and yelling, like, "Yeah, let's go!" And then he would compete, and good competitor. And then I remember we competed against each other, not he and I directly, but we had a team tournament back in early 2013. We competed in a team tournament. It was a 3-team tournament, and it was like me, Chad, and Kyle, one of my coaches, versus Mark and 2 of his guys.
Was that the Ego?
No, that was the AGC. Okay. And we competed, and super cool guy. Guy's always been super nice. And then I actually got to hang out with him a little bit in Wisconsin. My buddy Wade Barton, he's in it's like just north of Madison, Wake something. I always forget the name, but just north of Madison, he has a gym up there called Stronghold. And so he would invite us to do these camps. And, I got to know me and Mark. The other person would sometimes it was a different person. Sometimes it was Sean. Sometimes it was like a guy named Moose. But me and Mark were always there.
Sure.
And, Mark, he's hilarious. We had a good time and had a blast. I think my favorite memory of all of us hanging out was one year we did the camp, and it got the snow started coming down because it's, Wisconsin.
Sure.
And we're in this like little campground area, and the snow just started coming down. And we, me, Mark, and all the black belt coaches went out to this little hole in the wall bar and basically got drunk and played darts and pool and stuff for the night. And it was a good time. But anyway, so I wanted to have him on the podcast. Fun dude. And so he gets into a lot of interesting stuff. We don't get too much into like his like sort of journey, but Mark shares a bunch of ideas on just ideas that I think could be useful to people. Things like, if you've got kids and you want them to train, he has 3, and, they all have different varying degrees of training. So he'll talk about that, and also talk about becoming a little bit older and having to train, and some tips that you can do to make that happen. How can you train and compete and continue doing this stuff as you get a little bit older, and a lot of other stuff, little actual tips. So I will jump into that podcast today. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. And again, big thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen. Charlotte's Web. Real quick, it's something funny. So Eugene and we don't do what are called reads. Because I don't like reads. I'm terrible at them anyway, even if I wanted to.
Well, we do reads, but they're not scripted.
Nothing we do is not scripted reads. That's what I mean. Like I basically go off of like, hey, I actually use the product. Here's some things to think about. And so
you're unable to do a scripted read. Yeah,
we've tried.
Literally impossible.
Good. But we were. I was at a seminar this weekend up in Cape May, New Jersey, South New Jersey. And the guy, Chuck, the owner, he was telling me what listens to the podcast. And he was saying, I kind of like listening to the ads sometimes, or the reads, because they're not scripted. He's like, you never know what's going to pop up.
Right.
But I thought that was interesting. And I know we've had the other opinion where people get grumpy about it.
Sure.
So, but I wanted to share.
But the thing about our reads is like, usually there's a story associated somewhere. And like, there's usually some tip.
Or
it's
something.
Like, there's something.
And so
sometimes there's not.
And so with that, for some of you guys, I got a question the other day about this. Someone was asking kind of like the dosage that I use with CBD. So like me, I've tried multiple different dosages. So I've gone up as much as like in the 60, 70, 80
60
range.
milligram is the.
Yeah, I've gone that range, like where I was taking, like I didn't realize it, but I was taking like, because it was like half a dropper, and I was taking a full dropper.
You're getting it.
And I was getting like 120,
Oh boy.
So I was like, woo. So that, but honestly, I didn't feel as good as I feel better when I do like the 17. So around 17 milligrams is perfect for me.
Yeah, I do like the 25 milligrams.
Yeah, it's exactly. So for me, like when my whole routine, like I said before, and you've listened to the podcast, my CBD routine revolves around nighttime, because that's where I'm trying to like any sort of supplementation that I can do to improve my rest and recovery and anything else. I sort of throw that into the mix. And so my CBD is a part of that. And I typically take the little 17 dropper, or sometimes I'll do the gummies, which again, you can get to around 10 or 15, because
they're like 10.
They're 10, but they're increments of like 5.
Okay.
But it's like 2 is 10. So it's like, 1 is 5. So I'll take like 3 of those or whatever.
Tasty.
But again, if you guys want to check out any of their stuff, I encourage you to try them and see what you think. Go to their website at charlottesweb.com. The promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off the order. And again, if you've never tried CBD, try it for a month, see what you think. And again, whatever product you get, you can, not that you're going to work the same way as me, but that's what I use when I use CBD. And also thanks to our sponsor, Matt at Epic Roll. EpicRollBJJ.com is the website. If you've never been on his website, I encourage you to just kind of go browse around. I like his stuff. Look at any of my videos on YouTube or Instagram, and you'll probably see me in the Nogi videos wearing either a rash guard or a pair of shorts from him because I think they're super comfortable. He does make good gis, but again, I only typically train 1 or 2 gi days a week right now, so I'm not in the gi as much. So you may not see that as much, but makes fantastic products, and the t-shirts and everything else are great. So regardless of whether or not you're looking for training gear like rash guards, shorts, gis, or if you're looking for t-shirts, hoodies, whatever it might be, check out his website at epicrollbjj.com. If you find something that you like, you're like, ooh, I want that, I want to wear that, I'll put that on for some training, then use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu for 15% off. And thanks to our sponsor, Choke Coffee. Choke Coffee is obviously it's a coffee company that was started up by jiu-jitsu people, right? They have the names here that they have for the roast. They have White Belt Tears, which is a breakfast blend. It's their best seller. I wonder if some people bought that just because of the name. There's the Bolo blend, which is their espresso blend with hints of caramel and chocolate. There's the Smash and Pass, which is an Ethiopian. You know, I don't know about some people. If you're a coffee nerd, I'm not a big fan of Ethiopias.
I don't know what the difference exactly.
Like a lot of times Ethiopian, like they're good sometimes. Like I like them occasionally, but typically they have a very fruity, tart almost. Like I remember like sometimes like back in the day, people would be like, oh, you know, you would talk about different coffee flavors, you know, like they do with beer. You know, when you're younger, if your taste palate or if your palate hasn't adjusted to it, you're like this. Like someone said, hey, beer tastes like this, that, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, no, beer tastes like pee. It's gross. But then after you drink it a while, you're like, oh, okay, this like I understand. Coffee is the same way. Ethiopians typically, for at least for me, have a lot of times like fruit flavors in them, and they're tart. And again, it's not bad, but I like coffee.
Do you like a lighter or a darker roast?
Typically medium or dark. Like I don't like a super dark roast. Like typically,
I really like the White Belt Tears, the lighter roast. I really like those.
And it's a breakfast one, so it's probably like a medium roast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Ethiopians, a lot of times those are going to be a little bit, typically, not always, a lot of times on the lighter side. And then there's a snap, tap, or nap, and that's decaf. So if you guys can get that, if you want to. And again, they have some different things with it. You can do like a monthly or bi-weekly subscription so you don't run out. And again, it's a jiu-jitsu coffee brand made by it's a coffee brand made by jiu-jitsu guys. And also a cool thing, a portion of their sales goes to the Guardian Gym, which provides youth jiu-jitsu scholarships. So they are a gym that essentially is a nonprofit, and they try to make jiu-jitsu and MMA training available to people that don't have the money to do it, and to help kids find something to put their energy into. And it's a good organization. So if you want to check them out, you can go to their website at chokecoffeeco.com. So chokecoffeeco.com. And then if you want to save 10% on the order, use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu. And guys, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to our Patreon, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Upon joining, you will get access to an exclusive library with a tip or something actionable that you can do for your training, or some actionable idea that could support you from every single black belt / guest that we've had on the podcast, which this has included everything from obviously black belts to doctors who are world renowned for fixing people's backs, to strength and conditioning coaches, all that in between. So again, there's a lot of guests that we've had on the podcast, and every one of them has a piece of wisdom that you can learn from if you'd like to dive into that. And it's affordable. It's at a very affordable price. And you also get access to some other exclusive stuff like videos, seminar recordings, warm-up routines that Eugene's put together, some good stuff. So if you want to get access to it, you can go to the Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast and sign up today.
For all you people that don't like the ads, there's an ad-free version on there, which, enjoy it. You're going to miss out on the banter, but that's fine.
You get your ad-free versions.
Get your ad-free version. Go ahead. Do it. And you'll get it a little day early. So there you go.
And if you would like to get my daily email, you can do so by going to my website at jiujitsu.net/join, JOIN. Upon joining, you'll get access to my email that gets sent out almost every day. And then you'll also get some exclusive offers there. And then you'll get access to a couple free ebooks that I give away. By the way, if you are an email subscriber, I say this because one of my students talked to me about this the other day. If you're an email subscriber and if you just haven't gotten an email in a while, check your spam folders. I recently changed the software that I use and it seems to be fine, but I've had a few people say that they were not getting the email. So just check and make sure you're getting your emails. And then if for some reason, if you're not, you could always resubscribe by going to the website I just mentioned at chewjitsu.net/join. But otherwise, just make sure that you can say, hey, put this in my inbox instead of the junk. But guys, with that said, let's talk to Mark.
Nick,
you just got back from a camp, didn't you?
Yeah, from Wade's camp. Chewy knows my schedule. I'm literally all go all year long. So taking a day off when my son's birthday is tomorrow. I gave him a mohawk yesterday, taking the day off, mess around a little bit. He's training for no-gi pans, so we do have to train today for him. Yeah. So I'm gonna take him in, teach class, take him out for dinner today and stuff, and celebrate. Really do the proper birthday celebration.
How old's your son?
He turns 10 tomorrow.
Very cool. When did he start training?
So he started training when he started training when he was 3 years old.
My son's 7, my daughter's 5. They've been kind of training a little bit off and on, you know, a couple days a week, but it's like, it's always, man, I don't know. I'm hoping it kind of get over the hump where they want to train more. Right now, it's just like pulling teeth. It's like, we don't want to go. And I'm like, well, your ass is going. Like now I'm trying to push. And I'm like, what's the balance there? You know what I mean? Like, how do you kind of keep it fun? Which it is fun for them. They love when they go, but the process of going is kind of tough.
Well, I have 3 different examples. I have 3 children. So they're all spread out. I have a 23-year-old from a prior marriage, a 16-year-old, and then also a 10-year-old. Well, we'll be 10 tomorrow. So each one I had to kind of treat differently, completely differently. And it's really weird because I have a lot of black belts in the area that come and ask me, how'd you do this? How'd you do that? Especially with my 23-year-old. Chewy, I don't know if you met her, Mikey or Bianca.
Yeah, I've met Mikey before.
So Mikey, she's like a super late bloomer. I didn't realize she was
23.
Yeah, she's 23. She's also like 4'2", but
she just looks super. I guess it's the short thing, you know. Yeah,
she's super short and like she's Asian and she's very pretty. So it's just like not a lot of people realize that she's 23 years old. Yeah. So she didn't really start training until she didn't really start living with me until she was 8 years old, and then she was not into athletics. She was just a bookworm, complete nerd. She'll be the first one to tell you. Just like reading books and everything like that. I'd take her to the gym. She'd sit in the corner and just read books. That's all she ever did. And I told her, I'm like, you need to exercise. You need to do something. So the deal I had with her is she would just train once a week on a Saturday. And she would just go and just do kids class and everything like that and just kind of mess around and so forth and so on. When she was 11 years old, she started wanting to train regularly because she saw a lot of the kids in the kid class started to compete. She's like, oh, well, they're my friends and I want to go to competitions too because they're my friends and I want to support them and I'll try to compete. So when she was 11, she started training a little bit more, a little here and there, and she was good. So she was decent. She was training maybe 3 times a week, I would say. And it was just something that she wanted to do because she had made friends and she wanted to hang out with her friends. She got really good, really fast. And I never pushed her or anything like that. I just said, go do kids class. I never taught kids class back then. So ended up happening. Well, I personally didn't teach it. I had other people teach it. So ended up happening is that she got really good and she started kind of like doing very well, making that transition from the teenage belts from the kids belts to the teenage belts and the adult belts. When she was 15 years old, I kind of, for lack of better terms, like cock-blocked her, for lack of better terms. And I gave her a blue belt a little early. She actually was not, she was about to turn 15. So I just sat there and I was like, here's a blue belt. Concentrate on school. I don't want you competing. I don't want you competing anymore until you're an adult. So because she started feeling a lot of pressure. So I was just like, no, let's not mess around with this and stuff. You're a blue belt now. Just concentrate on getting good at jiu-jitsu. So obviously school happens. She was wrestling in high school. She didn't because she's an intellectual. She does really, really well in school. So she didn't really have time during high school to train jujitsu. So, but she was wrestling. So ended up happening is that she graduated, and then something happened. Honestly, something happened during COVID, where my daughter and I were training all the time with just a small group of people, and so it's like something snapped, and she just got really good, really, really, really good, and she just started going on a tear, just dominating some of her divisions and everything else. And now she's a brown belt. She's been a brown belt now for 3 years, a little less than 3 years. And just I just want her to sit there and keep getting better at it. Don't feel any pressure, compete. And that's kind of her track. My 16-year-old, so she's the natural athlete of the family. She's the jock, 100% the jock. She picks up everything super, super quick. I didn't really have to explain anything to her. But she's also the girly girl. So when she was 4 years old, she just started hanging out at the gym with me and stuff. And she just wanted to be with her sister all the time. But she's super non-confrontational. Like if you could get a glimpse at her psyche, all you would see is just butterflies and rainbows. That's it. Just not want to, like, everyone's trying to kill her, and she's just thinking about what she wants to eat at Olive Garden or something. So, but she was very good. And I just basically told him, again, just train once a week, train a little here, a little there. And again, she wanted to be at the gym because all of her friends were there and she's having a good time. And something happened after she started competing, because she would compete here. I never pushed them. I never push kids to compete. I never do. My son's a little different because he's crazy, but we'll talk about him in a second. But my 16-year-old, I never pushed her to compete. I told her, do it once a year just to make sure you know what you're doing. Just like proof of concept, if you will. Just once a year. I don't really care if you win or lose, because where do you want to eat afterwards? I know you want to eat at she loves Italian food. She loves Olive Garden. So I'm like, whether you win or lose, we're going to Olive Garden. It doesn't really matter. I don't really care. So I hate Olive Garden. But
I was wondering, it's like when you mentioned Olive Garden, it was like it's awfully specific with the Olive Garden comment.
She loves it. I hate Olive Garden. I love the breadsticks.
The most generic, probably Italian food.
Yeah,
That's not even like Italian food. We
were
working on a sponsorship with Olive Garden, but you just
ruined that. I just ruined that. Yeah. Don't get me started. Don't get me started on PF Chang's, but that's a whole other topic.
What?
But so she grew up. There was her and one other of my kid students, and they were literally neck and neck all the time. And my daughter didn't really care. She's like, whatever, I don't really care. I just train. I'm just here to train jiu-jitsu and whatever. And the other student that we had, the other high-level competitor that we had, kids competitor that we had, was trying to kind of how you see those kids online on Instagram and stuff and on TikTok, their parents are blowing them up on social media and doing all this and trying to do that. It's the 11-year-old that's trying to get a sponsorship from Short.
Oh yeah, it's always sort of strange.
I can't deal with that. I'm like, look, they're children. Just let them be kids.
Yeah.
Because you don't know if they want to do this for the rest of their life or whatever. Just let them be kids. If they start when they turn 18, you can have a conversation with them at that point, or 16, 17, 18, and you kind of go from there. But my daughter felt like I was pressuring my 16-year-old felt like I was pressuring her like that. And she got on Fight to Win. She did well on Fight to Win, and she literally just said, "I'm done with jiu-jitsu." And I was like, well, for years I had no idea what happened. I was like, okay, I just want you to be and my requirement had always been train once a week so you know how to defend yourself, bare minimum. I don't care if you train jiu-jitsu. I don't really care if you train boxing. I don't care if you train Muay Thai. Train in something. So now she's into guns. It's great. I'm like, no, you can't carry a gun to high school. Don't do that shit. But something, no, don't do that. But she's at least she stays involved. But I found out maybe about a little less than a year ago, that the reason why she quit is that she felt that she was always constantly being compared to that other person. And I was like, no, you never were. I just wanted you guys to train because you guys just get good together and stuff like that. Yeah. I never wanted you to compete. You want to compete, you go compete. And then, which brings me to my son. So my son started training when he was 3. And I just made it play, honestly, 3. He wasn't really training. He just wanted to play the games at the end of kids class. So at my school, while kids class is going, there's always an adult class that's going too. And it's basically the parents that are always kind of training during that time. So that way the parents can't hover over their children. And I could always just, if you get that hockey dad or that soccer dad or whatever, that hover parent that just says, hey, like they're trying to coach in the middle of kids class. I just walk over with a gi. I'm like, here, you should probably go train with the adults over there. So, and it works out because like it really, really works out because the parents are always like, okay, I understand what my kids go through now. Yeah. So I would have my son when he was 3, just kind of like help me teach the adult class. And, there's pictures of it all over my social media. He's just hanging on my leg, just like doing nothing. And then he would always just ask like to go play with the kids when they were playing games. And I was like, for a little bit, and he would cry. He would throw a tantrum if I said no. So he only wanted to play the game. So right before he turned 4, I told him, look, if you want to play those games, you actually have to do class. And he understood. He got it. So right from there, when he was 4, he started training a little bit more, and he just had fun with it. And then when he was like 5 turning 6, like right around that time, he got really good at it. And then he was like the king of the castle with the kids class for like the 6, 7-year-olds, like 5, 6, 7-year-olds. And then he started getting spoiled because he started competing and throwing tantrums. And that's when I said, no, I'm not having that. So I pulled him out. Thank goodness for COVID. I pulled him out and I threw him into wrestling. And I just threw him into wrestling. I'm like, look, you're going to wrestle full time, 100% full time right now. It's just going to help you. It'll toughen you up a little bit. Someone else, just so happened, we found a phenomenal program. Toss him up, Wrestling Academy in Waukegan, Illinois, which apparently is one of the top 3. If not, it's always in the top 3, like nationally rated junior programs in the country. Nice. In the country, I had no clue. I literally had no clue. I was just like, I walked in one day. My buddy had brought his kid there, and he says like, "Oh, well, you should have your son Alex try this." And I was like, "Yeah, go." And he sat there and he went in, and I met the coach, Derek Noble, the head coach, Derek Noble. He immediately knew who I was. Because apparently he had grappled before, he had done MMA before, and we're all kind of in the same community.
Sure.
And he immediately knew who I was. I walked in, he's like, "How you doing, coach? Saw you compete here, saw you do this, saw you do that." And I'm like, "Uh-oh, like what the heck?" And then and I was just like, "Look, I don't want to be anybody here. I'm just a parent. I'm dropping off my kid. I'm kind of sort of watching practice, but not really. And I just want my kid to get beat up a little bit. But he coaches like me, and I'm like, okay, this is why I want my son to go. Go. And then so now he's ultra competitive on his own. He's kind of trying to find his way because he wants to transition back to jiu-jitsu, but I kind of want him doing more wrestling if at all possible. So it's a little back and forth. So he's competing at Kids Fans. It's going to be his first IBJJF tournament. It's going to be his first jiu-jitsu tournament in years since COVID. So I just told him, like, look, you have to understand, you're going to be going up against children that are, this is all they do. Mm-hmm. Like this is all they do. Just go out there, have fun. I don't really care if you win or lose because we're going to be at Disney World anyway, so it doesn't matter. I don't really care. So like it's my vacation, so it is what it is.
Yeah, you're pretty hands off. Like I mean, I kind of am too. I don't really try to coach my kids at all. I was like, I want them to go do the kids class. I don't really do a bunch with them. We have some mats at home. We'll play around a little bit, but it's more just wrestling and playing around. It's not really anything structured. So I've been trying to be more hands off. Like, do you feel like that's a good thing to do? Or like, what do you think is like, maybe if people like myself as well, trying to get my kids a little more interested in jiu-jitsu, what are some like kind of tips or advice you have?
So one of the things that I always do is I always refer back to the coach. So like right now, my son is starting to make a little bit of transition to training with me in some of the more competitive adult classes, if his training partners are there. So we have two like other preteens that will sit there and train. And if they go to an adult class, I will allow my son to go to that adult class. So the things that even during that class, I treat him as basically another student. I don't play favorites. I just basically, if I have, I literally try to pair him up or partner him up with someone who's like one of the best partners. 2 of my kids instructors are also in those classes. And I just try to basically allow them to figure it out. Just let them go. I'm pretty hands off. I don't like to comment a bunch. I believe as a coach that you can only coach someone 3 times per class. Anything more than that, it becomes like nagging. Anything like anything less, they might not find, like, they might feel that you're paying any attention paying any attention to them. So I like, because it's my children, because it's my son, my daughter, or one of my daughters. I try not to coach them 3 times within a day, because at that point they feel like I'm nagging. So I'm
Sure.
very hands off. I might try to tell them something in the morning, something during practice, something on the ride home, something like that. Other than that, I make sure that they're partnered with someone good, and it's that person's responsibility to kind of communicate with and interact with them and teach them jujitsu. I try to, as much as possible, make it like it's not a big deal until this is going back to my eldest daughter. I never really cared whether or not, like, how far she went or how hard she trained, until she told me one day. She was, I believe, 16 years old, and it was right around Christmas. And she goes to me and she was like, "Dad, I want to do what you do. I want to compete at Pans." I'm like, "Well, this came out of nowhere. Like, your blue belt, like, this was your first true 16, like, 16 going to 17, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, this is your first blue belt, real big time blue belt tournament. It's gonna be a juvenile, da 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 da." I'm like, "Look, you have a week to decide if this is something that you really want to do. So on New Year's Day, I'm going to ask you again if this is something you want to do." Uh, so she told me New Year's Day, "Yes, I do want to compete at Pants." I'm like, "Okay, well, for lack of better terms, your ass is mine. Like, when I go to the gym, you train. When I do this, you do this. When I say this, you do this, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You need to train now like a pro. Like, you're going to need to sit there and be strict about this and do everything like that." That was the only time that I was kind of hands on. And basically, I set the groundwork and I set the framework and I kind of gave her a routine. And it was really up to her. I just held her accountable for it. Basically stick to this, stick to this routine and you can compete. If you don't stick to this routine, if you don't do this, I'm just going to cancel your ticket and I'll just go by myself.
She also approached you for it, though.
Exactly. I never pushed her for that. But that's like, but she got it. So with my, like, it would have been like, I would have really liked to have seen what would happen with my 16-year-old. With my 10-year-old, I think I'm going to handle it exactly the same, as much as humanly possible. Every child is different. So I always recommend that, always be supportive to your child. Always try to make it casual, and always try to tell them, like, "Look, there's going to be something more than this." I always tell all the parents of our kids' classes, if we build someone who's a phenom, that's good. That's great. We absolutely would love that. But at the same time, this is something we want to teach your kids jujitsu, and basically have them value it as much as we do as adults, such that when they have the opportunity to come there by themselves, when they have nothing to do, when they're 16, 17 years old, and then they start driving around and stuff, instead of going to the mall, they'll be like, "Mom, Dad, I'm going to take the car and I'm going to go to jujitsu. I'm going to go to Newbury Training Center and train jujitsu." That's kind of what we try to do with our kids program. And so far it's worked. Our kids program has been growing, completely growing. A lot of that's due to my 23-year-old, Mikey. She's the one. I literally placed her and my other coach, Benny Dahl. Those are my two kids coaches. I literally just sat there and turned the program over to them. And those two, like, they are the kid whisperer. I don't know what they do, but they just do it. And every so often they'll be like, to me, like, they'll shoot me a text like, "Coach Mark, you need to teach class today." And I'm like, "Oh, they're messing up." Like, "All right, okay, I'll go." And like, I'm the one, like, if I teach kids class, they're all gonna quit. Like, on the regular, they're all gonna quit. But like, I'm the one who just kind of like puts them in line stuff.
Comes in and cracks the whip a little bit.
Exactly. Like, I just basically, like, "Look, you guys, like," one of my favorite lines to yell in kids class if they get a little too loud. I'm like, "Wow, I did not realize that we were teaching talk jitsu here. We were teaching jujitsu." You know what else is like talking? Counting. Like, when you count burpees. So start doing them. And I'll make them go for like 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes just doing burpees. I'm like, "Keep counting. You guys like to talk a lot. Keep counting." And they hate it. "Keep talking, guys. Keep counting." But anyways, yeah. So that's my kids' jujitsu story.
That's cool. So maybe going to you. So first off, how old are you now? And then how old were you when you started jiu-jitsu?
So I started jujitsu. Let's route one. Right now, I just turned 47, and I started jujitsu like basically towards the tail end. I don't remember exactly. All I know is that it was the winter, late fall, winter, if you will, of 1997/98.
Okay.
early 98. So that's when I started. And yeah, so I've been doing it now for what? Oh, and there's also, I took a 4-year layoff basically to raise my first kid. So basically I've been doing it for about 25 years total.
Okay.
25 years worth of experience.
And what was the
So
experience like starting off like in 97? Because obviously, you know, this is something I always like to talk to some of the guys that have been around for a while.
mhm.
You know, if someone comes into your gym as a beginner, they've got this really nice facility that's dedicated to jiu-jitsu training and it's all there. What sort of environment did you come into when you started training in 97?
You know, it to be honest with you, my first experience with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was me getting beat up by both my older and my younger brother because they already had started training Jiu-Jitsu years before me.
Mm.
They were already blue belts and they would beat me up at home and just try moves at home, like on garage mats and everything. And it was around December of 97 or 98 when my younger brother decided to open up a brick and mortar Jiu-Jitsu school. The
Oh,
first
wow.
it was the first, if I'm not mistaken, and people's opinions vary, uh, but if I'm not mistaken, it was the first brick and mortar Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school in the Philippines. I
Okay.
know there were other Jiu-Jitsu schools that were there, but those Jiu-Jitsu schools, quote unquote schools, were operating from like someone's garage or whatever the case may be. I
Sure.
believe my younger brother was the first one who actually like took out a lease and had mats, or they made mats at that point. Had made mats, they matted out an actual area, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it was the first like organized school, if you will, in the Philippines. And so that was like I would walk into there, and quite frankly, my experience going into jujitsu, I try to make that experience basically the same for my students now. And I'd like to say it's pretty close. Now, the big difference is how you learn jiu-jitsu back then. Back then, it was just like there was not a lot of information out there. It was kind of rigid. It was like, these are the positions you kind of need to know. And you just kind of like drill these positions over and over and over again. And it would be, you might do 1,000 really bad closed guard arm bars in your first like 2-3 weeks, but because that was the information that was out there. And everyone, I could see my younger brother really kind of looking at the positions. Yes, they'd be teaching it, but they're also trying to figure out things like that work for them, or
Mhm.
things, different variations of it, while everyone else is drilling. You can see it, you can just see it in their heads, like looking back at it. It's something that I'm sure like Chewy, myself, uh, any instructor for that matter, while they're teaching class, and if they're teaching like a fundamental move or what have you, they're actually, at the same time as they're teaching it, their jujitsu ADHD is probably kind of trying to figure out, there's got to be a better way I can do this, or a
Mm.
shortcut a shortcut, for lack of better terms, that they can do. But it was just rigid. That's all it was. Nowadays, I tell everybody who walks into my facility after the first couple months and they fall in love with jujitsu, they're addicted to jujitsu. I tell them, like, you guys are spoiled as hell. You guys
Hmm.
do, like, you guys have no clue. Back then, we were beg, borrowing, and stealing for VHS tapes. Like, there would be fights. I remember there was this play. There was this one place in the Philippines, in Green Hills, Philippines, in Metro Manila, called Squadron Shop, and that owner had like, he was the only one who had the master tapes of every VHS, of every martial arts instructional on VHS. He had like the one in the Philippines,
Oh,
and
wow.
you would go to him and pay him some money, and he would make you a copy of the tape. And of course, like, he'd like take the tab out so you couldn't like re-record it, like duplicate or anything like that. But he was like, people were going to this guy and paying him decent amount of money to just get a bunch of VHS tape. I still I'm in my basement right now, and I've got those VHS tapes somewhere, like in my crawl space and stuff like that. They're somewhere here. I could absolutely dig them up and stuff. I don't have a VHS player to play them, but like I have them still. But like nowadays, Chewy, do you remember the Grappler's Notebook? That extremely large Grappler's Notebook. I forget who made it. I think it was like Craig Kukuk and
Oh,
someone
yeah. Well,
else.
I had
Greg
a
Nelson, Craig Kukuk.
I had a Craig Kukuk instructional. It was pretty good.
It was good.
Mine was on DVDs. It came in like, it was like 12 or 14 DVDs that went into like every
Yes.
little position or whatever. And yeah.
Yeah, they had my first um, foray into off the mat learning jiu-jitsu by yourself was the grappling. It wasn't the grapplers. No, it was like, oh God, I just said it too. But it was like that whatever it was and stuff. It was like this big. It was a binder this big, and it literally looked like just like follow the arrows, and this is how you like learn stuff. And that was like, I'll just be reading it over and over and over again. Like I must have won the grapplers notebook. I went through that thing. I don't know, once a week, just flipping through it and stuff and everything like that. And but nowadays you have YouTube, you have TikTok, you have Instagram, you have all this other stuff. You have BJJ fanatics. You have like simplifying jiu-jitsu. You have all these. You can go anywhere now. There's so much jiu-jitsu out there that it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming, and it's hard now because now the role of a coach is not just to sit there and teach jiu-jitsu, but it's almost to kind of refocus, not reel them in. Really, you never want to reel someone in. You want to expose somebody who really wants to learn to as much as they can, but it's trying to refocus them and kind of like realign their energy into what they need, like that immediate for like the next, like for the short-term period, for like the next, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks. Just focus on this. Trust me, focus on this. A lot of people are trying to like, I absolutely love when white belts ask me for privates and stuff. I don't do a lot of privates.
Sure.
I actually hate doing private lessons, I'll be honest with you. But like, I don't do a lot of privates. But some white belts are like, hey, Mark, I want some one-on-one time with you. And I'm like, okay, cool. And the private's there. And you're like, okay, what do you want to work on? All right. So I've been on YouTube and I've been trying to work squat guard. I'm like, Jesus Christ. You literally don't know how to do a closed guard arm bar. You've been training for 10 weeks. I'm like, my God.
Well, and I think that's what you described a second ago is what I tell people to do pretty often, because it's what I do and what I kind of find value in is like you said, okay, I have this thing called the Grappler's Notebook. This is giving me some value. It's what I have to work with. And I keep going through it over and over and over again, like, multiple times, not just once. And I think that sometimes people, they undervalue the importance of just doing things over and over again, because what happens is like every time you come back around and do something, you find stuff that you missed. Because as well as I do, you can give all the details there on a platter to a person, and in a classroom, they're just not going to get them all. Like today, I was showing a really simple, it's effective, and there's some details to it, but a half guard pass that I use. And one of the black belts who's very good was like, oh man, that's a great detail. And someone else was like, yeah, that's really good. Like you've been holding out on us, And I'm like, no, I haven't. I was like, I've been showing that damn thing the same way for years. I'm glad you picked it up now, but it's always been there. Right. But I think that, for a lot of people, because I still do this to this day. If I find something that works, and let's say it's an instructional in a video or a YouTube video or whatever, I will go back and watch it again. And then I'll go into the gym and try it. I'll come back and watch it again because I'm like, I want to try to figure out what I'm missing or try to get a good grip on it before I just move on to something. Right. And I think that what you just said before with the Grappler's Notebook, just reading through it over and over again is what people should tend to do. Is like once you find something that you're like, ooh, I want to try this, stop watching stuff. Just go ahead and say, this is what I'm working, going on like I call them information diets. Go on a diet for a little bit, focus on this, and let's just hammer that home for a few weeks and see what happens.
I see. It's always hard too because some people will, for example, my daughter Mikey, she's short. She's barely over 5 foot, and she starts to try to play a lot of lapel guard and do all this and so forth and so on. And I kind of tell her, I'm like, just so you know, you are built like me. We are stubby little dwarfin like people. So we don't have a lot of, our limbs are not that long. Like we're really like, we're very trunk heavy. So I try to tell her all the time. I'm like, look, know how to play that stuff because you're going to need to learn how to defend it. That's one thing, but also understand that there's going to be some things that you're trying to work on ad nauseum that we're going to have to kind of figure out ways to kind of adapt it for you if that's what you really want to play. But the reality is that you might not be able to play this on a lot of people anyway. So we might have to kind of move on per se, so to speak, and go to something else. My advice for a lot of people that have passed that, like say 6-month hump, if you will, like I always tell like new beginners, if you train 3 times a week for 3 to 6 months, somewhere around that 3 to 6 month period, you're going to have that aha moment where literally your muscle memory kicks in, you know how to move and everything like that. And then all of a sudden you just can pull off moves. You can pull off maneuvers. You start really doing things really, really well. Your understanding of that you finally, that initial door for jiu-jitsu finally opens up, and all of a sudden you start you have a very kind of basic understanding of how to move your body in all these different positions in jiu-jitsu. And you could start kind of like, that's when watching YouTube and watching jiu-jitsu matches, grappling matches really kind of comes into play, because at that point you become a fan. You're like, I want to be like that guy. And then at that point, I just tell them, find someone that you like to watch. Ideally, it's someone with the same attributes that you have, the same body type, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just try to see what that person is doing. And if it's like a high level individual, say, for example, you are built like Marigali, like you're a white belt, kind of smaller version of Marigali, not in shape and everything like that, but you're young enough to sit there and do all that. I'm like, go look at Nicholas Marigali. And you could, that is the pinnacle of what you can do. And like, that's this type, like, we can start working with that. Once they get to like the blue belt level, at that point, I'm like, you have basic proficiency in everything that, like, let's just call it that. Let's just say there's 15 different positions in jiu-jitsu. You have basic proficiency there. You know what to do in all of those 15 basic positions. You might not be able to pull it off all the time, but a good majority of the time you can. And it's at that point, I'm like, all right, you're a blue belt now. You're like a teenager. Go off and do things. Be rebellious and try to figure things out. Throw stuff at the wall and see what it sticks. That's where YouTube really comes in, because it's just like, okay, now you can sit there and start using all those different informational resources and start trying to kind of like study certain people, if you will, and hopefully the same attributes and so forth and so on. And from there, you can be like, okay, I can do that. And they start tinkering around with it. And then that's where I come in on the back end and be like, okay, I've also watched that person as well too. And this is what he does. And I see you trying to do it too, but this is what you're not doing. So let's try to figure out how to make that connection. And that's kind of like, I really try to kind of get everyone at our school learning on their own as much as possible. And it becomes to the point that once they're a blue belt, like a very well-established blue belt, going into their purple belt, I'm more of a guide. I'm more of like a guidance counselor, if you will, or more like I'm just a tutor. Like, okay, that's what you're trying to work on. Cool. How about we try this? I give them different ideas and stuff and so forth and so on. And then we kind of look at it together. And I'm like, and I just give more feedback or options. And I always tell them, like, look, if you're trying to sit there and play lapel guard and everything like that, I don't have the longest legs in the world, and this is how I play it. It might work for you. And if not, let's figure out a way to make it work for you. Kind of go from there.
What's your so you started about 25 years ago, and the jiu-jitsu has obviously evolved, lapel guards, and there's a lot of different positions and techniques. Like, what's your process for learning techniques and still evolving your game at, you're 47,
Correct.
right? At 47, what are you still doing to kind of keep up with some of these techniques or even add more layers to your game?
So I'm sure Chewy will tell you, I'm probably one of the most active, if not the most active competitor on the IBJJF circuit. That's like on all levels, so to speak, all black belt levels at least. Because there was like a 3-4 year period I was pretty much competing every week, like somewhere. Like remember one summer I was competing 10 out of 12 weeks, just traveling all over the country and stuff. Just doing that. I compete a lot, and I believe that it is, for me, the best way to kind of see what's out there, not just by maybe competing, but also kind of watching people at the competitions. I watch a lot of matches. I do, and I just like I'll sit there and kind of like speed watch it first, and if there's something that I like, I'll sit there and go back and slow down certain parts and kind of look at the different details. I'm like, how did this individual get that pass? What were they looking at, and so forth. So I'll watch it. I'll watch it like at 2 times the speed, just like that, and I'll be like, okay, back it up here, and then I'll just go at normal speed if I have to slow it down, so forth and so on. But I watch a ton of jiu-jitsu, and I literally like to try stuff and throw it out there and stuff. But at the same time, the one thing that I found, you do this long enough, jiu-jitsu is like it's cyclical. Everyone's trying to reinvent this position and try to do this and try to do that. There are like all the moves, all the lapel guards are different reincarnations of the same guard, so to speak. Like, for example, you can find a guard that is very similar, very similar to it. And if you can sit there, for example, I believe that regular worm guard It's pretty much Delhi Hiva with a lapel. That's all it really is. Squid guard is pretty much lapel plata, which is basically just cross guard going to omoplata. So if you know how to defend an omoplata when someone's shooting for an omoplata for you, you can defend a lapel plata, which means that would be inherently how you would try to sit there and defend squid guard, or a way. It's not the way, but it's a way to do it. So if you can defend the basic kind of iteration of it, you just need to kind of tinker with it a little bit and try to sit there and then figure out how to kind of use those defensive tactics, or use that to use that to neutralize, say, something that's that new wave jiu-jitsu, so to speak. No knock on new wave jiu-jitsu. I'm not saying like that, but I'm just saying, you know what I mean, that movement of jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
But it's all cyclical. Like, everyone's trying to sit there and do something and reinvent the wheel, but at the same time, all you need to do is take whatever that modern position is, and then try to go ahead and figure out a way to relate it to something, or draw that dotted line to something that's already been out there. It's all there. It's there's no secrets in jiu-jitsu anymore. Someone might invent like a grip or a little, for lack of better terms, loophole that'll stump a lot of people, but people will figure it out. People will absolutely figure it out. For example, 50-50. 50-50 still, it's still prevalent and everything else. It's still kind of like an equalizer, but people people have figured out how to get out of it, how to stay out of it, how to flip the script and use it against you if you're the one who's trying to insert into 50-50 to stall somebody out. But it's all cyclical. Then sure enough, what's going to end up happening, and it's already kind of coming back already, at least in the gi world, close guard's coming back. People are putting people in close guard, and it's just like, you know what? Get out of my close guard. Oh, you don't even know how to open close guard.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. All right. So that's all coming back. Look at Hudson Mateus. He just put you in close guard. And then if you open up his close guard, he'd sit there and somehow get you into 50-50, and then he'd armbar the hell out of you. So it's all kind of like coming around again and stuff. And it's just going to be a matter of time before it kind of changes again. So my advice to everybody, learn fundamental jiu-jitsu, and always just try to sit there and understand, try to figure out why the position is working for you. So for me, and again, this is an extremely long-winded answer to your question. I still try to learn by really just kind of letting people put me in the most fanciest type deal stuff, and me learning how to play it as well too. Trying to understand conceptually why it works. For example, this lasso, someone puts me in a lasso, or this lapel guard, it prevents me from passing to this side, or it completely neutralizes this side of my body. So I need to either deny that, or once they get it, change the angle such that they no longer can control me as well. Change the angle, change where my weight's at, change my posture, or change my weight distribution. So that way, when they try to actually capitalize on it, they can't. They really, really can't. And then from there, problem solve and figure out what is the one thing they need to make this position work. And then from there, take that out, and then that's going to force them to essentially get out of the position. And then from there, I can go ahead and just keep going.
What's your desire for just being so active? Is there a reason or a goal? What's your intention for competition? I mean, obviously competition can make you so much better.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great tool for improvement. Kind of like you said, when your kids compete, it's like a good idea for them to know where they stand. But being so active, especially at your age, do you feel what are some of the positives and some of the negatives of that?
I'll go over the negatives.
Sure.
But negatives, I'll go over the negatives first, rather. Everything hurts. But there's that's part of it and stuff. I've noticed now, within the past year and a half, there's no way I can do that, compete 10 out of 12, 10 out of 12 weeks. That's insane for me now. I don't think I could ever do that again. Now that getting closer to 50, again, I have to rehab a lot more. I have to stay on top of my PT, stay on top of my mobility work, stay on top of my lifting and training, my strength training and conditioning schedule and everything like that. Just have to do it. Just take care of my body a lot more. There's a lot more to it. So for my advice for all the youngins, especially the ones that wish to be competitors, spend 2 sessions a day. One in the morning, one after your last training session. Work on your mobility, stretch, roll things out, get on that foam roller, do things, just whatever you need to do. It'll save you from like one taking a half an hour just to get out of bed, and then like foam rolling and doing muscle activation for an hour, and then trying to do it again for like another hour after your last class or right before you go to bed. Save you a lot of time. But that's like one of the cons. Pros, first off, why I do it, I'm like, for me, this is like my biggest vice. I am ultra competitive. I love it. There's nothing that replaces it. It truly, truly is. And it's a life skill for me. I went through a really kind of like a hard time in my life. It's just like there was a suicide attempt. There's everything like this, all this other stuff. Jumped off the balcony, everything like that. And for me, I needed a regimen. That was like an O2. I needed a regimen. I needed jujitsu back in my life. I had quit jujitsu for 4 years, for like a 4-year period. So once I got back into it, I got into routine. That's when I hooked up with Jared Weiner at BJJ United up in Philly, and he's the one who kind of got me back into that routine. He didn't explicitly sit me down and tell me like this is what I need to do, but because he was such a fiery, competitive individual, just seeing him work and just kind of like always work towards a goal, that kind of helped me out. And that kind of like sat there and set me on a path. So he was leading me without like even leading me. I was just watching. I was just observing it. Like, okay, cool. I could do that too. So I started doing it. And once I kind of moved back to Chicago, went on my own, so forth and so on, I really started like pushing a competitive style, so to speak, or like competitive school, if you will, or competitive team, if you will, mainly because it was us always looking towards a goal. Like Kyle Watson, who's one of my teammates in St. Louis, he preaches about the art of improvement. And part of the art of improvement is putting yourself out there and testing yourself constantly in anything for that matter. And in order to do that, you have to you always look at yourself in the mirror. Can you be better? Yes, you can be better. Sometimes we need to be punched in the face or grapple a grown man in the open division in order to sit there and kind of test yourself, and as opposed to looking in the mirror and saying like you could be better. Sometimes you need to suffer that loss. Sometimes you need to get smashed for 5 minutes and barely, or put to sleep or what have you, in order to figure out like you could be better. Like, some of us are stubborn. Sorry. But it's for me, there's nothing like it. The whole training to improve yourself that can like that to me, that's my drug. That is 100% my drug. That's why I love doing it. The actual act of going out there and competing, it's whatever. It's just another match. It is what it is and stuff. But it's the lead up to it for me. That's kind of that process is more or less what I'm addicted to. I love it all. It's great. For me, I know that a lot of my students, I have some really great competitors, especially at like at UV training center at our school, that I can speak to for sure because I see what they're doing every day, and to the best of their ability, they're mimicking what I can do. Financial advisors, like financial moguls, like you have attorneys, you have real estate people, everything like that. They're trying to like mimic, trying to create their own routine and trying to mimic what I do to the best of their ability and putting themselves out there because it makes them better, not just as jujitsu practitioners, but as people. And that's why I preach it, so to speak, that, I never force people to do it because some people just aren't made to do it or physically cannot do it for whatever reason. But I always tell people, I'm like, look, if you can do it, if you have the means to do it, if you have the opportunity to do it once a year. It'll actually give you something to work towards every single year, or every so often. For me, even when I compete, there's always a goal that's at least 12 months in advance. That's what my goal is. I tell all the people on my competition team, what you're doing today what you're doing for the next 3 months isn't going to really manifest itself in 3 or 4 months time. If for me, like you need to plan ahead. You truly, truly need to plan ahead. If you want to sit there and win, it's June right now. So if you want to win the Worlds in 2024, you need to start now. You got to start laying your foundation. And all along the ways, you need to sit there and have certain benchmarks that you can use to course correct certain things. For example, if you're an adult and you want to be a blue belt world champion next year, that's your goal in Long Beach. You have first, there's American Nationals, just to kind of see what we're starting with. Start there. Then there's, let's just say, for example, Jiu-Jitsu Con in Vegas. That's testing the proof of concept for the last 8 weeks. And then let's just say, for example, you do one more gi tournament somewhere in between Labor Day and the rest of the year. Pick a tournament. Let's just say the Nashville Open in November, right before Thanksgiving. Great, do that. Where are we at? Cool. From there, let's do something, I don't know, in January or February. Maybe if you can't go to the Euros, fine, don't go to Euros. There's a lot of money. Let's do something like, I don't know, like the Atlanta Open in February. That's always big. From there, let's do Pans, because Pans is going to be a nice, good practice run for the Worlds. And then from there, we just make whatever adjustments we need to, and we go full send. We go full send at the Worlds. And the reality is this: we want you to do well and see improvement and win at all those other tournaments prior to the Worlds. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It truly, truly doesn't matter. We're trying to prepare you to have a peak performance at where it counts. And that's at the Worlds. So like that to me is kind of like how I always plan. For me, I'm always trying to ramp up for World Masters. That's my big tournament. And then from
you've competed more as an older guy, haven't you? Like were you always so active even when you were younger, or is this more of an older guy thing that you've gotten into?
No, well, honestly, it's because I took that kind of layoff in jiu-jitsu and everything. And first off, back then we just didn't have as many tournaments. We just didn't have that much opportunity. I remember back in the day when, so I was given New Breed to take over one of my younger brother, who actually started in November of 2004. When he kind of moved back to the Philippines, he kind of literally just turned over the school to me and said like, "Oh, here it is. You can shut it down. You can keep going with it, so forth and so on." So that was in like February of 2005. Back then, there was, and you know this, there was like the random Naga that would come up. There was the Arnolds. That was everyone's worlds. Or whatever it was. And then it was only like, I don't know, in March of 2004 when I first heard of Pans or something like that, and I was just like, okay, well, whatever. I don't know what that is. I never knew about the IBJJF back then. And then, of course, obviously, more tournaments came, yada, yada, yada. More prestigious tournaments started coming around. The rise, which it was always there, but the rise of ADCC obviously grew, there's another subculture, for lack of better terms, that that evolved grappling in general, that evolved jiu-jitsu in general. I didn't really, and I was also at that time too, in the early going through towards the late 2000s, I was still working full time. So I really didn't have the opportunity to travel and do as much as I wanted to. That coupled with just wasn't a lot of tournaments. When I went full time, that was in December of 2006 is when I completely just quit my day job and everything, just went full time. That first year we tried to, I think I competed at purple belt. Let's see here, in 2005. That was like my first full year of purple belt. I competed just 3 tournaments. Scratch that. 4 tournaments. Scratch that. 5 tournaments. It was 2 Chicago Nagas. 2 Naga Chicago's. One Naga Chicago, 1 Extreme Grappling Open with James Klingerman's thing. That was in September, where I won the whatchamacallit, the Invitational.
Was that in 05?
Yes, in 05. I think. Yeah, you.
I was there.
You were there. You won the. I fought Rolly Delgado. I fought someone else that I fought Rolly Delgado, and I fought Kyle Watson, my teammate, in the final.
Cool.
And I won that as a purple belt. And I know you were there. I think it was. Were you there fighting Ezra?
No, I was. So I was in. If it was 05, I did the ego in 05, and I did the no-gi, or I did gi and no-gi, but I was a blue belt. So I was just like, They stuck me. I was doing the regular divisions, and then I went against Ezra, like went against them in, what was it, the Arnold Classic. One year, like in 07, and then and then we went against each other at the IBJJF, I think one of the Chicago Opens or whatever.
Okay. For some reason, I believe Ezra, because they had 2 at that ego. and I forget it was like a spring one, whatever it was. They had two like pro divisions, if you will, two
Yeah, they had like
invite
a
only
heavier
divisions.
and a smaller one,
Yeah.
didn't they?
Yes, correct. And I was in the midget version of it. So I was like it was 170 and under. But I did that. I did Pans, got destroyed. And then I did American Nationals, and I want to say it was another Naga, but I only competed like 5 tournaments. But it was like every chance I could get. That was like it. And then that's like when I first took over the school. And then in '07, that's when I started really traveling. I did Pans again and so forth. So I tried to kind of compete as much as I could. And I would compete alongside my students to kind of motivate them. This is what we're going to try to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then all the while, I didn't really start competing, like traveling and doing all that until like really until I moved into my current school's location in Niles. It was at that point, like we had already kind of built a really good kind of network, if you will, we had a good routine of how to run the school. And I could disappear for a weekend or even a week if I needed to prepare for a competition or what have you and stuff. And it was at that point when everything was like, nothing blew up, so to speak, and stuff like that. It was just like, oh wait, I can do this, and no one left, and let's go compete some more. And but like I would take students with me and so forth and so on. We just go start competing everywhere. But it really didn't take off until I would say 20. Oh gosh, it was like basically when World Masters moved to the convention center in Las Vegas. It was
Mhm.
like once it was at that point that I would go like every single year. Well, I believe I've been to every single World Masters competition that they've ever had. I think the first one was in Long Beach. Then they moved it to the Cashman Center, and then they moved it to the Las Vegas Convention Center. And I would always just tell people, I'm like, guys, especially for the Masters division competitors, I would tell them, like, guys, it's like Disney World for grown-ups. Like we go, I've never seen people so happy to lose in my life. They'd walk in there, they'd lose a ref's decision, they'd shake your hand, and they'd give you this look like you're the sucker that needs to stay here for like another 2-3 hours. I'm going to the Westgate. I'm immediately putting all the cash I have on black. Like like I'm drinking like a Modelo on the way there and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when a lot of people started traveling with me, and it just became like super addictive. We'd have a good time, build team camaraderie and everything like that. But like for
Mhm.
me, it was I believe that if I grew up through the ranks in this kind of like era, if you will, I believe as long as I had the means to, I believe I'd be competing as much as I could, as I
Mhm.
could. Um, I don't like, it's just all as much as my body could handle. That's
Sure.
the real kind of like thing that I've learned about it. That's what I try to tell people. I'm like, and now I do it for a lot of fun. Like I said, I'm addicted to it, but there's only so much more time that I can do this at the pace that I'm doing it. And I'm just trying to kind of have as much fun of it with as I can. I know people go up to me and say like, Mark, you're an inspiration. Like, like you inspire me to keep going and competing as much as you do and stuff like that. I'm like, no, well, I appreciate that. But literally, I just tell them like, look, I'm just a normal guy who's trying to have as much fun with this as I can, and while I can still do it.
Yeah, and it's probably a good idea with people in jiu-jitsu to maybe plot out a season for themselves
Correct.
because you can in jiu-jitsu there's tournaments all year long, and staying in competition shape and battering your body like that. I mean, if you're young you can get away with it, but as you get older it's really difficult to do that. um it would be useful to treat it like any other sport where you have a season that you get ready, you prepare, you're training all the time all year long, but then you have this period of ramping up followed by this period of where you just get after it for so many months, and then you have like, okay, now we got to back off the gas pedal a little bit, now let's coast until our next season. So that this way you can let your body heal up and you can have more longevity opposed to just burning yourself out.
It's funny you mentioned that because one of the things that kind of happened to me that kind of was like a big reset. I was always a competitor. I always did all this stuff, but like a big reset for me was tearing up my knee in 2013.
Mm,
So I had knee surgery on September 27th of 2013. And I was literally immobilized and everything like that for about a 12-week period, 11, 12-week period. And when I started my rehab, I was just very fortunate to be exposed to to two really big influences in my training right now. One of them is one of my best friends. His name is Jason Gusick. He is the owner of Conjugate Tactical, owner operator of Conjugate Tactical, which is like a West Side Barbell, under the West Side Barbell kind of branch, if you will. They teach the West Side Conjugate system to like tactical individuals, special forces, army, so forth and so on, cops, all that stuff. But he was also the strength coach for Eddie Wineland, UFC, the former UFC fighter.
Mm-hmm.
He would always sit there and tell me, he was the one who basically first kind of laid it out for me. Everything that you do within the night, like everything you do right now, is not going to manifest itself for a year. So your max effort today will sit there and help build, is basically going to be your max effort in 365 days. So you need to build up on that. So as you go along and stuff, that's what's going to be better for you're going to see the benefits there.
Yeah.
So just keep going and going and going, keep building off that. And then one of the other individuals that I was really kind of like exposed to, he was my student. He doesn't really train actively anymore. He's very beat up, but Olin Kreutz, the former Chicago Bear, the former Pro Bowl, should be Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer, Pro Bowl center for the Chicago Bears. He trained jiu-jitsu with me in 05. It was before they went to the Super Bowl. We just do a bunch of privates and stuff. And then then he trained with us again at the school at New Breed after he retired. He opened up his own gym. It was just a private gym, and he invited me to go lift there and stuff. But then it became something more. He started training offensive linemen, and it's very kind of, it's invite only basically. But some of the offensive linemen, the offensive linemen that are college players that are transitioning to the NFL, or some NFL pros. So I was actually able to see how NFL, how professional athletes prepare in the off season, mid season, how they kind of try to build up their bodies, how regimented they are. That's why one of the things I preach to anyone that listen, but my competitors or whatever is, and I just had this conversation with Mikey, my eldest, and another one of our students there. If you really want to do this, you need to train like a pro. You need to look at it like an off season. You need to look at what the real goal is, and you need to basically be as regimented as possible. Make it as be as consistent as you can. You have to have that off season goal. You have to have that in season kind of maintenance, if you will, that in season routine during that competition season. So let's just say you only do the gi season. I liken it to, and again, Olin will watch this, or some of the NFL players that I know will watch this, and they'll be like, "You don't know what the hell you're talking about." Of course, I'm just trying to sit there and kind of draw what I can from watching and observing NFL professionals, and kind of see if I can equate it to obviously Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, how you can adapt it.
Exactly. So I look at it as this: you'll see, for example, an NFL game is played on Sunday. They travel back Sunday night, and on Monday they're rehabbing. They're kind of watching video and so forth and so on. They're kind of retooling, if you will, kind of reflecting on everything that happened. On Tuesday, they're watching film. There's a practice. There's an offensive install. Wednesday, they're watching film. There's practicing. There's defensive install. What's that? So Thursday, you might have kind of special teams install, what have you, right? Watching more film. You break onto your specialty groups. You're focusing on something very specific. Friday is kind of like a rest day, and kind of just watching film and making sure everything's good to go. So, or Saturday, travel day. What do you do on Sunday? Compete, right? You play that game, and then you do it all over again, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you do for jiu-jitsu? So most of our competitions are going to be on a Saturday. Okay, cool. We compete on Saturday. Sunday, heal up, do some mobility work. If you train, do troubleshooting training, very specific, just play. None of the rounds really count. You're just trying to figure stuff out. Maybe you work on a little bit of extra cardio. Monday, offensive install. Do your lift, so forth and so on.Maybe a max effort lift right there. Tuesday, maybe another max effort lift, defensive install. Wednesday, maybe you need a rest day. Cool. Rest and maybe work on some specialty type deal things. Work on 50-50, work on squid, work on whatever it is. None of it counts. You're just drilling stuff. Thursday, kind of like a dry run, so to speak, a walkthrough, right? Kind of like a walkthrough. Do only the number of rounds that you think you're going to be doing in that next tournament. Okay. From there, Friday, travel day. Saturday, compete. Find people and that's the way I always look at it. Even if it's the off season, I try to stay in that mode the whole time. My lifts and like what I'm like, the intensity will change a little bit, but every Saturday I come to compete. I go to my open mat or what have you. And if I'm not competing, I'm at my open mat and I'll warm up. I'll do like maybe 3 rounds, 3 rounds, 2 to 4 rounds, whatever it is, just warming up, just dicking around. And then I'll find maybe 5, 6 people. I'm like, we're going to roll and we're going to roll real hard and we're going to compete against each other and let's go. And then that's it. That's my open mat. That's how I look at my open mat.
So, Mark, you've had a couple of instances, some life events that kept you off the mats for a long time. You also had some injuries that kept you off the mats. What have been some maybe ideas, and this could be even geared towards, high level competitors or even white belts? Because, you see sometimes white belts deal with injuries or even blue belts deal with injuries. They kind of fall off the routine of coming to jiu-jitsu. Right. It's hard to get them back in. And sometimes if you come back a little too early or a little too aggressively, you can re-injure yourself. And that a lot of times kind of is a nail in the coffin for some people, because then that break even gets longer. So for you, maybe what are some ideas or tips for that you have for coming back to the mats and kind of keeping yourself healthy, but also that, coming back from a long layoff?
So coming back from a long layoff, and I've had 2 of them essentially. Number 1, if you're coming back from an injury, let's start from there. If you're coming back from an injury, first off, if it's like a knee tear or something like that, find a PT that knows exactly what you're doing. Like, try to find something in your network. Try to find someone who's worked with wrestlers or judoka or someone in combat sports or even athletes in general, because they're at least going to sit there and give you rehab protocol that's not going to be designed for someone who's living a sedentary lifestyle.
Yeah,
I've seen.
He had a guy like that recently with a wrestler.
Yeah. So I'm a physical therapist. So I've seen that, man. It's just, it's rough. It's rough.
It's rough.
And you see what it does is it gets people injured. It gives them a false sense of security, because they say, well, you're cleared to go. But what are you cleared to go do? Are you cleared to go sit at a desk all day? Are you cleared to go get on the mats and wrestle or compete against someone?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's just, I know that person, that PT might be in your network, but literally grill them. Just like, what I really want to do. This is what I want to do and stuff. My PT just so happened, for my knee surgery, just so happened to be one of my blue belts, but he was already a multiple, I don't know how many years he was a black belt. Robin Wirtz, he lives in Boise now. But he was a black belt for over a decade in judo. So he literally saw the protocol plan and he looked at me, and it was funny because he got he was there for my post-op, my first post-op. He went with me. He actually drove me to it. And he sat there, got the protocol plan, and we just kind of flipped through it. And he looked at it. It was just like, see all this shit? See, this is all bullshit. This is if you're working behind a desk and stuff. So he literally taken just like literally threw in the trash. He's just like, I know what you need. I will sit there and kind of write something up for you. As a matter of fact, I'm not even going to write it up, because if I write it up, you'll start trying to do it at home because you're crazy. So and kind of go from there. Listen to your PT, assuming you find a good one. That's another one. Listen to him, because he's watching you're watching for specific cues as to whether or not we can do stuff. My biggest problem rehabbing wasn't that I was too scared to do something, is that I was stupid that I would try to do everything. And I needed to be like, I needed to be held back. So, like my PT, Robin, he was pretty ingenious and creative on his part. He created little tests for me saying that I will not clear you for the next stage unless you can do this. So, I would do it. And it would be a hard enough test that I would fail miserably. And I'll be like, okay, got it. I understand. Like, if you can't do this, you can't move on to the next stage of what we're doing. And and it'd be something that I would think like, oh, that's easy. I'll just fall flat on my face. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, he really was very creative in doing that. So when you're coming back from an injury, first find somebody that knows what the heck they're talking about and has some experience treating individuals that do what we do. That's super important. Listen to that individual. Take your time. Just take your time, and you need to. It's the real battle. As long as you like those first two are in place, the real battle is a psychological battle. And like, okay, you're cleared. Let's just say you're like Eugene, you're my PT, and you clear me like 100%. You're good to go. You're good to grapple. This thing's strong as hell. It's been 12 months. You can test it out. Go for it. It's that psychological battle. So I remember Robin would watch me train. He cleared me after about the 9-month period, specifically after PANS was done.
What injury did you have?
So it was a complete rupture of my LCL, like literally shrapnel, and remnants, like fragments of my LCL got embedded into my peroneal nerve.
Oh,
so
wow.
my quad started atrophying. So like literally, I would try a butterfly sweep. I'd try to sweep you, and my heel would just like collapse onto my butt. My quad would just say, "Nope, you're not working." Bang. So they went in, and they're just like, "Yeah, this is going to be like a 3-hour surgery. This is what's going to happen." Blah 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 blah. It was an 8.5-hour surgery.
Wow.
It's like an 8.5-hour surgery. They repaired it. They also went in and pretty much repaired everything else. They said the only two things that they didn't touch, because they didn't have to scope it, they didn't have to scrape anything off, they didn't have to do anything with it. They said my medial meniscus was completely fine and my ACL, but everything else they did something to. And I was just like, well, how the hell did my ACL survive? Like immediately in my head, I'm like, the ACL is usually the first to go. I was like, whatever. And then I remember the surgeon, as I woke up, I'm like, you're just like, I need ice. I've been intubated this whole time.
Yeah.
I need water. I'm thirsty. So they're like, you can eat ice. I'm like, whatever. Give me. I'm just like chomping on ice. And he's trying to explain to me, and I'm groggy. He's just like, you had a lot of damage in there, and we repaired it all. And it's been 8 hours or whatever the hell time it was. And he was like, I honestly don't know how you were able to kind of keep training. Be like, your injury happened on July 4th of 2013. You didn't get surgery until September 27th, and you're still training throughout the whole time. He's just like, your musculature was so built and strong around your knee that it was just holding, your muscles were holding your knee together. Like you should not have been able to do the stuff that you were doing. Now I'm like, whatever. And then like, that's what my knee surgery was. And so it kept me out for a while. And then my first tournament back was June. It was at 5 grappling. Thank God I only had one match. But I remember Robin was there and he was watching it, and he grabbed me in the bullpen, and he was just like, I want you to know you're going to experience, and he was right. Like there's going to be some doubt. I want you to know your knee is ready for this. So if you want to push your knee, you can. It's not going to break. Like Chewy, you're in that tournament too. That first 5 grappling in
2014. It's like right,
yeah,
2014.
Yep, correct. Yeah, you were there too. You had a match there too. So it's just like, yeah, I think it was like.
I actually think we were almost going around the same time. I
yes,
believe.
we're on the same mat.
Yeah,
there were only 3 black. If I remember correctly, there were only 3 black belt matches. There was my match against Nick Ramsey. I forget what his first name was, but he was from George Urgell. There was your match, and then Caprito had a match. I think those were the only 3 matches that day, black belt matches that day. Okay. And I just remember that. And my PT was just like, your knee's fine, you can push on it. And I remember I needed to wrestle up. I was so scared to wrestle up, and I was able to wrestle up and put him down. But it built so much confidence. I probably should have tested before that match. But yeah, just decision, so to speak. But it is what it is, right? It be what it's going to be.
And so, I mean, and here's a question to you, because as black belts that do this stuff for a living, we have a really cool position where, we have a lot more time that we can devote to this stuff. Opposed to someone that's say like working like 40 to 60 hours a week, doing a little training here and there and squeezing it in. My question would be to you, out of all that stuff, I know it all sort of works and supports something else, but of all the stuff that you do currently with the strength training, the mobility, whatever, if someone was like, all right, Mark, I've got time for one of these, right? Like I don't have time for all of these, right? But I have time for one of these. Where do you think the most bang for their buck would be? And again, I know that's difficult because they all have a thing, but if you had to choose one of those, like you can only have one of those right now for the next like 6 months, which one would you choose out of those groups?
So that's a phenomenal question. I first have to say this, for the most part, for the absolute most part, everyone's different. So you kind of have to kind of sit there and kind of like tweak it a little bit. But assuming everyone's all the same, or based on the trends that I see, the one thing, first off, we're going to assume that everyone listens to their body. So their body tells them to take a day off. They got to take a day off.
Sure.
Have someone that could basically work with you in terms of recovery and more specifically mobility. That's if you can only have one, that. I do think strength training, especially if you're older, you've got to make time for that. At least you've got to make time for that. That just basically it becomes like when you're younger, mobility recovery, in my opinion. It'll keep you, it'll kind of sit there and make you do it longer. As you get older, kind of like right when you hit your prime, so to speak, it kind of transitions to strength training. It really does. It can, like, just to allow you to keep going.
Sure.
Not to like, this is assuming that you're just a casual, so to speak, and you're just like, just to keep you hopefully just like at least twice a week.
Well, even like your knee injury, you was supported with like strong muscles, right? So
it's just like you have to. Yeah, I mean, you just have to. So I would say that it does change over time.
Sure.
From what I can see, but assuming that you have a good base in mobility and just general recovery work, it just kind of changes and it goes to like strength training.
Sure. And I think if you approach strength training in a way where you're doing like, say, just like we shouldn't like train with an ego, if you go in and you lift without an ego and you focus on getting like good range of motion, like full range of motion to allow your joints to fully articulate rather than like, I'm going to slap on as much weight and I'm going to do this ugly repetition that doesn't even, because I noticed that, just for instance, doing slow squats with like a pause at the bottom, getting that slow and sitting in that bottom section created more mobility in my hips, so that then when I was training, I was like, oh, since I've been doing those squats, all of a sudden my knees contract up to my chest a little bit. This has been helpful with my guard retention,
right?
Or even getting like doing certain exercises and getting a good stretch my pectoral muscle. And it's like, oh, my shoulder doesn't hurt as much because my pec's not constantly pulling. And so I think that if someone approaches, even like you were saying, like you do it to support your body. And I think that's maybe the important thing to remember then, right? Is if you're lifting, you're not lifting to be the strongest person alive. You're not looking to go get drafted. You're just trying to keep this thing together. He's not so sure. You're not so sure you're ready to be drafted.
No,
there is a big market in the NFL for like, 5'6"?
Exactly. Well, I just want to play special teams and be a gunner. That's it. I'm on punt kick.
I can just see a running back going, just hanging by their waist or something. They're just bringing you along.
It's gonna be great. Well, the helmet's gonna be like, I'm gonna look like a bobblehead, right? But it's gonna be great.
You have to like shoot a sweep single or something on him. Like
you have to trip them, and you don't think you can trip them. So that's the thing.
But to your point, Chewy, I 100% agree, and it's like it harkens back to a conversation. I tell so I started doing strength training programming for some of my competitors. I do it kind of like it's going to be something I'm going to personally be moving to when I stop competing a lot. So it's something like I've been trying to kind of like work with just a small group of my competitors. My daughter's one of them. Han Kim, he won World Masters last year. A couple other guys as well too. I've been trying to work with them and basically like I've been trying to make mini versions of me, for lack of better terms. And one of the things I keep stressing to them is like, do not ego lift. Don't do it. Like, do not do it. If what's prescribed is a max effort day, that's your max effort for that day. Mm-hmm. If you normally pull 4 plates, 405, and for some reason you're just a little overtrained, you had a long day at work, and you come in after your 9 to 5, and like before you train, you want to sit there and lift a little bit, and you're going to do your max effort day, and for some reason you can't get over 365, and that's your max effort, and it looks really rough on you and stuff. That's your max effort for the day. We're done. Go to accessories. And your accessory work is kind of where all the real kind of like benefits come from. Like you said, change up your squat a little bit. Go extremely lighter weights, stay at the bottom a lot longer, just kind of feel the stretch, feel the increase in the mobility, and come up as is or what have you. All those little accessory type exercises will make you better, will make you stronger and stuff. Just like do not ego lift and do things right and stay regimented. It's just like it will help you.
So the way that you guys talk about learning techniques, spending time on certain aspects of jiu-jitsu is I think sometimes if you're very limited on time, it can seem overwhelming to work on all your mobility. If your mobility in general is not great, it can seem very daunting to do so many things. And Chewy, you and I were having a conversation. You work on some mobility work. You do a few exercises, don't take a ton of time, and then you reinforce it with maybe, Sam, you're working on your hips and knees or something there. You're reinforcing with movements, strength training movements. You're going to mobilize the area, and then you're going to lift and strengthen those areas, those new capacities. And you do it consistently. And over time, you're going to make changes. You can't just stay. It's not like I'm going to learn this technique and I'm going to use it for a week and then I'm going on to something else. You're never going to develop that. So if you want to develop a certain type of mobility, you have to have consistency throughout an extended period of time, just like jiu-jitsu, just like you're working on jiu-jitsu. And I try to tell people that I work with, like the mobility and the strength training work and the stuff that we do, it's actually an extension of your jiu-jitsu. And it doesn't seem like it's the most fun thing to do because you're like, well, how does this correlate to jiu-jitsu? Well, it will. The dividends will come when you can get your hip in a certain position. Somebody's passing your guard and you don't pass the buck to your knee and then hurt your knee because you have the adequate mobility in your hip or something like that. Or you're able to give yourself enough time to tap. Maybe somebody has you in a certain position and you have just enough mobility to give you that half second to tap before something, breaks or tears. So I think like use it, chunk it, right? Like do like a little work on something like your hip or your knee, and focus on that for a little bit of time and supplement with strength training into those new planes. I think that's just and then go to something else. And then maybe you might not need as much time to dove. And you still want to kind of add a little bit, but that's just a way. But I think both of them, you're correct. I don't know if I would pick one over the other. I think they're both so important, the strength training and the mobility work.
Truly tough. And like I said, you might get that physically gifted, just ultra strong athlete who, I don't know, maybe he's just like a pipe layer. And it's just like, you do not need to do much with strength, my friend. Like you don't have to do it. You don't have to do that much and stuff. Like you are already like, like you're a laborer and everything like that. Just like you don't need to get stronger. So let's just make sure things don't break on you.
Yeah.
Kind of go from there. So like we have a couple of those too. Insane.
Yeah, I did an ego, and I remember one of James Clearman's. Nick. I always talk to you about him. I remember. What is he? Was he a plumber?
He's a plumber. Yeah.
I remember this guy got a hold of me, and I was like, "What is his grip? Like this is because Adam, my buddy Adam, is also black belt, has a very strong grip, and I was like, that's like Adam's grip. I don't know. It might have been stronger from what I don't know. When you're a tournament, like people are really grabbing on too. I was like, damn. Yeah,
but that plumber grip's different. It's like Albright, one of the guys at the gym. Yeah, plumber. He's got that plumber grip.
It's absurd, dude. Yeah. It's like it's not human. It's like a vice. I'm like, there's no way I'm breaking this. You got to hold my collar, man. It's over.
I have the pleasure of I used to be training almost every single day with this one. He's a brown belt still because he took some time off, but his name was Robert Pellegrini. We call him. He looks like the physical manifestation of Ram Man from He-Man. He's like short, stubby like this. First off, he's a firefighter, which means he saves lives. Okay, so like he's big, strong guy. He's one of those guys like, there's a fire, knock on wood and stuff. I want that person to be running through that cinder block wall, and he probably can do it. Number two, he's like an electrician, like as well too. So he's just like stuff that he works on is just like you really that crank on it. So when he's the only person I've ever seen who he'll pull guard on me and he'll play spider guard in nogi. He'll just grab my wrist. I'm like, ow! Like, give me my hand. I want my hand. And he's like lassoing in and out. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, leave me alone. Like, this is stupid. I don't want to roll with you anymore. Like, I'll be all sweaty and everything. It'll be like my 8th round of rolling nogi and be like, why am I here? This is stupid. Like, but it just reminded me of that.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to ask you, man, what do you have kind of coming up? Like, as far as, looking at the year ahead, are you still looking at competition? What do you kind of have going on as far as your goals for the rest of the year?
So I kind of have everything already planned out through World Masters of next year already and stuff. So at least in my head. So I'm also one of those Boy Scouts who as soon as I see the tournament pop up on a calendar, within 24 hours, my flight and hotel will already be booked for that tournament. So I just get like, I'm just one of those guys. Just like if something's on my calendar, that's me. I've committed resources to it. So I'm signed, sealed, and delivered. So for me, the next tournament that I'm doing is going to be July 1st and 2nd in St. Louis, the IBJJF St. Louis Open. And then so that's going to be I know I'm probably going to fight on Saturday. And then that Thursday, I'm going to be in Vegas at American Nationals. And then let's see here. The 20th, I believe, is the Orlando Open. I compete in mostly IBJJFs, mainly because, like, number one, they're consistent. I know there's a lot of IBJJF haters and such.
But also too, especially as a Masters competitor, like
Yes.
guys are going to be there at that age group where, if you go to another tournament, they'll just be like, "Hey, Mark, we don't have anybody. We're just going to smash you into like the young guy brackets. Have fun."
And I hate that. And that's happened to me when I go to the locals and stuff. But at the same time, because I know that's a possibility, I don't mind it so much, because if I go to a local tournament, and I'm the guy who always has like 2-3 gis and some no-gi gear in my trunk. So I'll go to the local tournament, and it hasn't happened in a while because I just haven't really gone to the local tournament in a while. They haven't really come back, so to speak, in Chicago just yet. This year they have. But I'll go in. The promoter asks me like, "Hey, Mark, this black belt's looking for a match. Do you want to fight him?" I'm like, "Sure. Let's go." Like, I'm gonna go to my car. Give me a second. When are we doing it? How much time do you need? Let me just go to my car and get my gi and my belt, and let me just like freak out for a little bit, and I'll just come and get you, and we'll do this thing. So after the Orlando Open, that's also the same weekend as Kids Pants. There's that. I'm doing the next weekend, which is the Phoenix Open. Then I'm trying to decide whether I'm probably going to take the next week off, and then I believe the Chicago Open's that next week. And then from there, I'm not going to do anything until World Masters. After World Masters, I'm going to switch to a little bit more no-gi, but at the same time, I know that there's going to be an Atlanta Open sometime in September, so I'm waiting for that. I know that there is the Nashville Open. I'm already registered for. I've already booked for that, and then I've already booked my hotel and everything like that for what's it called, for Nogi Worlds. And then I hear, based on what I've talked to from the IBJJF, Euros is going to be again the last week of January in Paris. So I've already started allocating resources to that, and Pans next year. And then I'm probably going to skip Brasileiros next year and stuff. I just had 2 bad experiences in Brasileiros, just like adrenaline dumping and just like, bah. But we'll see. That's what I say now. Watch, that'll change. And then American Nationals, of course, for 2024, and then World Masters. That's kind of like how I have it already kind of structured out.
And then for anybody that's in the Chicago area listening, Mark, what part of Chicago are you in?
So we're in the near north suburbs. So we're not in Chicago.
It's not Chicago, but like it's like for a guy coming from Louisville, it's like it's the suburbs of Chicago, which
right. So we're
massive.
Chicago. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's expanding. So we're in Niles. So that is literally just north of the city, pretty close to the airport. We've had people who literally just land, have like a 6-hour layover, and they'll call us up and say, "Hey, can I come in?" And I got a 6-hour layover. I figure based on Waze and everything like that, based on GPS, it takes like 15 minutes to get to your training center. If you guys are open, can I go over there, just train for like an hour and stuff like that, and then shower, then head back to the airport? I'm like, I don't care. I'm here. Let's go. Let's train. So let's do it. So yeah, so that's where we're at. We're now.
And what name of your gym? New
Breed Training Center. We have some of other affiliate gyms as well too, all around the area. So if you are coming to Chicago and you're going to be staying downtown, we have other affiliates that are closer. Go train there.
Yeah. And if you guys want to follow Mark, what's your your Instagram, social media handle type stuff?
So you can follow me directly on Instagram at Vives. That's M as in Michael, Vives, BJJ. You can also follow New Breed Training Center on Instagram as well too. On Facebook, it's Mark Vives, first and last name, and also New Breed Training Center as well too.
Awesome, bro.
Awesome, bro. Well, appreciate you being on with us today, bro.
Oh, I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk Jiu-Jitsu. Always love talking Jiu-Jitsu.
Absolutely, man. Hopefully we'll cross paths sometime this year. We usually do it at least once in Wisconsin, but hopefully we'll do it sometime this year.
Absolutely. I'm sure at Nogi Pans or Nogi Worlds, one of the two.
For sure.
All right. Take care, guys.
Man, nice to meet you. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Nice to meet you as well. Peace out.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. Thank you for joining us today on the podcast. Again, hopefully you guys got something from that, listening to Mark, who is, he's been training for an awfully long time.
Very long time. He looks great for 47. Looks great. I'm like, dude, you just don't age, do you? So
it's like Asian people.
Oh, well, there you go. Chewy said it.
It's what my Asian buddies say.
Yes, he's like, it's something about being smaller. I think sometimes too, being kind of small.
Sure,
you're like,
I don't know, man. Mark's just like he's a
youthful guy. He has a lot of energy.
He's got a lot of energy. He doesn't have a damn wrinkle on his forehead. Right?
No, he doesn't. What is that all about?
I mean, like my forehead looks like damn Sharpay. Like so.
I do have to zoom in with the cameras. Zoom in on that. No, you're good.
Do that.
Yeah, like he's got full head of hair. He's got, but man, he's
very handsome.
Anything with anything. Mark's just seems like he has a lot of energy and man, I mean, to compete as much as he does, that's an emotional roller coaster. I think like being able to do that, that's super cool.
Eventually you do it so much that it becomes just like, I'm here.
It becomes a norm.
Yeah, it becomes like a normal thing. He's competed so much. I mean, it's one of those things where with Mark, I mean, God, man, I'd go to places and he would just always be around.
It's like, dude, why are you always here?
Like he was everywhere.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But again, he's a super cool guy. So if you guys ever get a chance to learn from him, super good technical black belt, very skilled. And again, definitely I would encourage you to train with him if you ever get a chance to come across him. And again, thanks you guys for listening to the podcast, and thanks to our sponsors for helping make it happen. Charlotte's Web, you can check them out at charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off the order. Again, for those of you that asked me recently, I got a couple questions about it. The particular dosage that I'm using right now is around 17 milligrams, typically at night. So that's when I like to take my CBD as part of my sort of rest and recovery routine. As Mark said, recovery is big. It's very important, especially as you get a little bit older. And again, CBD is one of the things that I employ to help out with that. Also, thanks to Epic Roll for supporting the podcast. EpicRollBJJ.com is the website. If you're looking to get a new rash guard, pair of no-gi shorts, a gi, t-shirts, anything jiu-jitsu related as far as merch or gear, you can check it out at EpicRollBJJ.com. He's got great designs, high quality stuff. Again, it's got my bearded seal of approval, and you can check them out there. And if you want to save 15% off your order on one of the items, you can go to Jiu-Jitsu, or you can put in the code Jiu-Jitsu at the checkout for 15% off. And also thanks to Choke Coffee. You can check them out at chokecoffeeco.com. So chokecoffeeco.com. And again, it is a jiu-jitsu inspired coffee company. So obviously jiu-jitsu guys that made a coffee company, and they've got all of their blends have names that would make you at least think about jiu-jitsu, like White Belt Tiers, which is their best seller. And again, they have some memberships that you can set up to, like it can be like a monthly or bi-weekly, depending on how much coffee you drink, so you don't run out. But again, check them out, go through their website, see if there's anything that maybe you're interested in. I've tried the coffee. Eugene's tried the coffee.
Yeah,
it's good coffee. It's good coffee, so you're not going to get like junk coffee. It's small batch roasted, so you're getting a fresh roasted coffee that goes. Because again, one of the things, I don't know if you guys know this, if you go to like the grocery store a lot of times and you just pick up something, a lot of times unless you look on the back and find like a roasted date, that stuff's been sitting there for a while. The longer that stuff sits, it just doesn't taste as good. And a lot of times, if it's these big companies and stuff, unless that's their thing, it's just it's okay. It's okay coffee. And the way that you make the coffee is important, making sure that you get the right water temperature, opposed to like just because you can just burn it up. It doesn't taste as good.
Yeah,
I promise. Like, and I said, I've had people that fought me on this. They drink their K-cups. And I'm like, no, you can't do this. It's terrible. And then I would like put up cups of coffee, and I'm like, try these cups of coffee. And a buddy of mine, I remember he was like, I would make it in an AeroPress, which is a neat little gadget.
I got one.
And I remember he was like, dude, he's like, I can drink this without cream.
Sure.
He's like, this is delicious. But then the other coffee tastes like crap. So anyway, if you're going to drink coffee, get some good stuff. And again, if you go to the website at chokecoffeeco.com, you can save 10% using the promo code Jiu-Jitsu. And guys, if you want to support the podcast directly and get access to the exclusive library that we've built with actionable tips and ideas and wisdom from every person that we've had on the podcast, including Mark, every black belt, every strength and conditioning coach, every doctor that's talked about how the body works and everything else. If you want access to that, you can get access to it by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. get the Patreon membership for an affordable price. And on top of that, you can get a podcast that will have an ad-free listen. So you won't hear us talking in the ads. If that's something that bothers you, maybe it doesn't, but if it does bother you, you can get access to an ad-free version. And if you want to get my daily email, you can do so by going to my website at chewjitsu.net/join. And again, once you join, you get access to my daily email that I send out and the free ebooks that I give away upon joining. Also, for any of you guys that are current subscribers, if you haven't gotten an email in a bit, check and look in your spam folder, because I switched software recently. And so some people have told me that they weren't getting emails. One of my students told me this the other day. And so you can check and make sure that you're getting the emails that way and like in the spam folder. Eugene's doing that right now.
I'm checking just to make sure.
Okay. And then again, if for some reason, let's say for some reason you're not getting the emails at all and they're not in the spam folders, they've just disappeared, then just go to my website at chewjitsu.net/join to resubscribe. So guys, with that said, thank you so much for joining us this week. We'll see you next time.